INFOWARS on a Saturday with Dave Mustaine hanging out at his house. So, I don't know. But check it out. Those new reporters, I don't know, maybe they were just doing a trial run. But hey, I'll do a trial run as well. And I noticed they each read a quote. Quote of the day. So there's a lot of quoting going on. Not a lot of getting out on the streets going on. I think that was my first time seeing those guys behind a big desk like that. I like to wear these glasses and also these amazing power gloves that give me extra dominator strength. I'd be willing to put on a suit jacket as long as we had the AC going. I don't want to get too hot and stuffy. Instead of reading you a quote, I'm going to read you a story. It's story time on the INFOWARS Nightly News. When Patrick Henry was a boy in Old Virginia, he wanted to be an orator. But when he tried to speak, his words ran together and he swallowed the ends of them. Like saying going instead of going. He set out to correct this, but he knew the other boys would make fun of him if they ever heard him practicing. So he would slip away to the woods and make his speeches to the trees. He had read about Demosthenes, a statesman who lived in Greece long, long ago. Demosthenes, too, had made up his mind to be an orator. But his trouble was that he stuttered. To try and cure himself, the little Greek boy would go down to a lonely beach where he would put 3 or 4 pebbles in his mouth and orate to the waves and the sand. He was careful to put the pebbles in front of his teeth. Otherwise, the practice wouldn't have cured the stutter. After a while, he could throw away the pebbles and speak like anybody else. And he grew up to be one of the greatest orators who ever lived. So the boy, Patrick Henry, said to himself, Demosthenes can learn to be an orator when he had a stutter. Why can't I learn to be one too? There wasn't any beach handy where Patrick lived, but there were plenty of big, wild woods, and the trees were always there to hear him. Sometimes a beaver would stop by, and often a woodchuck would sit up on a stone to listen too. Patrick knew that an orator must not be afraid to face a lot of people. But he was used to doing that because he often played the music at neighborhood dances. He was an awkward lad and didn't dance well, but he played lively tunes on his fiddle and his flute. Like the good neighbor he was, he played for nothing while others danced. Patrick was good at sports too, but he was not good at making money. One time his father bought a store for him and his brother to run. But the 2 boys trusted everyone and gave goods to people who were too poor to pay, and soon there was no store left. When he was only 17 years old, Patrick married a farmer's daughter, Sarah Shelton. They were both poor. They did have plenty to eat because food was cheap. Clothes were expensive. Fashionable people in those days ordered their fine clothes sent all the way from London. Sarah spun and wove cotton and wool, and she and Patrick wore the plain clothes she made. They didn't mind that, but what bothered them both was that no matter how hard he tried, Patrick never got any nearer to his great dream of becoming an orator. Patrick used to gather with the other men in the town square. There, they would read the papers and argue about politics. At that time, Virginia was still one of the American colonies and belonged to England. The trouble between the colonies and England was bubbling up in a lot of places. In America, people had more freedom than they had in England. In the American colonies, a plain man could get ahead. In England, he had to be an aristocrat to reach a high place in the world. A great deal of misunderstanding between the two countries. Besides, England was far away from America, and it took a long time for messages to go back and forth. If the colonists sent a message to London in April, they had to wait till Christmas before an answer came back in the slow boats of the time. That left plenty of time for people on both sides to get angry. In the town square of Virginia, the men began to get very angry indeed. One man walked up and down shaking his fist. He was a tobacco farmer, and he snapped out, "How long does King George think I can run my farm at the price I get for my tobacco? Why must I sell my tobacco first in London and then let London sell it back here? Why can't I sell right to the man who wants it? I'd save time and money that way." Another man tried to quiet things. "That's not King George's fault," he cut in. "He wouldn't stand for anything like that. It's the people under him." That wasn't true. But this man was one of the few Americans who thought King George was all right. It was too bad that such a situation had come to pass. But the British people really meant well. They just didn't understand, and they were too far away to talk things over. The angry farmer turned to one man in the crowd and went on. "Jamie, you own the store down there. Suppose I wanted to buy a bag of sugar. Sugar that you raise right here. You wouldn't be allowed to let me buy it from you. First you would have to go to Richmond and sell it to somebody there. And then he would have to bring it back and sell it to me. What happens to our tobacco is worse. Our tobacco has to go all the way to England and then back here. It doesn't make sense. Never mind whether it's the king or the people. It's the same bad business for us." A dignified older man who had been sitting silent now rose and spoke in a sober tone. "It isn't respectful to talk about the king as though he were a simple man like us. You should say, His Majesty the King. Anyway, be careful. British soldiers may hear you, and then you would go to prison." He walked away, shaking his head. A young man with a woolen cap on his head called after him, "We're as good as anybody over there. I have no use for the British. One of their soldiers made fun of my cap." Now this was a small thing, but when people are angry, small things count as much as big ones. It was the custom for everyone from the King of England to a small errand boy to wear a wig. Some of the wigs were powdered white and had curls at the side. Some were arranged with a sort of club in the back, tied with a leather strap or a ribbon. But in Virginia, where it was hot, some men wore caps because they were cooler than wigs. The man who said the English had made fun of his cap went on, "That English soldier said only colonials wear caps. The airs those English give themselves. Think they're better than everyone else." That day, Patrick Henry listened and for once took no part in the talk. I knew what I wanted to say, and the men wanted to hear me talk too. I'm only a countryman like them. Now, if I was a lawyer... His wife answered quickly, "Patrick, why don't you study to be a lawyer? Then you'd have a chance to speak out." Patrick was only 24, but he said he was too old. Sarah laughed at that. 24 is young, she said. But, said Patrick, I haven't the money to go to college to study law. You won't need it, said Sarah. You can study right here at home. Other lawyers here will help you. And that is how Patrick Henry became a lawyer. His first clients were a group of farmers. When he walked into the court for the first time to plead their case, he was a homely man, tall and lank, with red hair and shabby clothes. He looked so poor next to the aristocratic lawyers on the other side that even the judges were sorry for him. He rose and turned to the jury. He began to speak, and all of them stopped, being sorry for him right there. He proved he was a good orator and a good lawyer, too. He won the case for his farmers.